Ampetawashte Midakiapi. Wachiapiwi, Imachiapi Lana, Shichango Lakota, Imataha Lana, Itancha American Indian College Fund, Chante Washte Nape Chayuzapi. Good day, everyone. Welcome to the American Indian College Fund's Native American Heritage Month Book Club. Cheryl Crazy Bull, the president of the College Fund. I'm Shichango Lakota from the Rosebud Reservation in South Dakota. I'm really happy to be here with you today. I'm honored to welcome our guest author, Amanda Peters. I'm going to read a little bit of information that I noted about for Amanda. Amanda is a member of the Glooskap First Nation from Canada, where she is currently an associate professor in the Department of English and Theater at Arcadia University. We're real excited to have her join us because Amanda, while she has an excellent background, she's also a graduate of the Institute of American Indian Arts, one of our tribal colleges. And so, we're looking forward to hearing a little bit more about that experience from her. She has a short story collection that I was already familiar with, Waiting for the Long Night Moon. And that inspired me to pick up her book that we're going to be talking about today, The Berry Pickers. Um, and in her book, The Berry Pickers, Amanda looks at some of the incredibly challenging things that we experience as Indigenous people when we become invisible in the environment that exists around us. And so her story about a Micmac family whose youngest child is stolen from them and goes missing while they're really taking care of their family's well-being. Really looks at themes of grief, culture loss, and resilience, and I think has a narrative that is really meaningful to all of us. And that particular novel, which was her debut, as I mentioned, received the Andrew Carnegie Medal for Excellence in Fiction and was also recognized as the best first crime novel by the Crime Writers of Canada, where she received an award of excellence. So welcome, Amanda.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Thank you for joining us. So we had questions. Just those of you who've joined us before know that our kind of normal process is to share some questions that we came up with in our reading of the novel and give Amanda the opportunity to share her thoughts about it. And then we do also take questions from you, the audience. So we invite you to submit those questions. And our team in-house will help us go through those questions and ask Amanda some of them toward the end of the conversation today. So Amanda, our first question is really about your experience at the Institute of American Indian Arts. It's a tribal university located in Santa Fe, New Mexico. And as many of our listeners know, the College Fund works very closely with American Indian students, American Indian and Alaska Native students, and with the tribal colleges and universities, providing them support for their work that they're doing. You completed your MFA there, and you said that was where you started this novel. So we're interested in hearing what your experience was like there as an Indigenous writer, and especially as a member of First Nations in Canada coming into the United States to work.
Yeah, I loved my time at IAIA, I have to say. I didn't even know it existed. I finished a certificate, an online certificate in creative writing, at the University of Toronto, and I was looking for just a little bit more to give me a little bit more oomph to my practice.
Hmm.
And so I was looking at a few places here in Canada, and then a friend of mine said, "Have you heard of IAIA?" So I looked it up, and I was like, this is where I got to go. I have to go here. So I applied, and when I was accepted, I was so excited. And I found my people there. I don't know how other way to explain it. Like the mentors there and my classmates were just so, it was kind of the first time in my life I didn't have to explain myself completely.
Hmm.
There, I was there to learn, I was there to write, I was there to interact, and I absolutely loved it. And I used what I thought was a short story at the time. I submitted as my writing sample, which was the first chapter of The Berry Pickers. And in my head, I was convinced it was a short story, but everybody who'd ever read it said, no, it's a novel. So when IAIA, I used it as my thesis. So I had about half the novel done when I left, when I graduated in, what was it, 2022.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, so yeah, and then I just kept writing, and yeah, so there's a lot of beautiful people who went into making that story good.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Did you feel comfortable in that environment, being from a different
I
Indigenous
Yeah, I did. There was
community?
another Canadian Indigenous person in
Mm,
in my cohort, so but I never felt out of place or awkward. It was probably for the first time in my life, I felt welcome and supported in a way that I hadn't before as an Indigenous writer. So yeah, I just absolutely loved my experiences there. Unfortunately, it was during COVID,
yeah.
so we were supposed to go down for residencies, 6 or 7 days at a time. There's supposed to be five of them, but we only got to go to our graduation residency in May 2022. So I didn't get to meet everybody officially until like the graduation. But
Yeah.
we still talk. I still chat with my mentors. I still meet on Zoom every couple months with my cohort. So yeah, it was brilliant.
Yeah, I think you're telling a story that I want to make sure that our listeners relate to because that's what we hear from our students who attend tribal
Mm.
colleges and universities. That sense of belonging, that sense that you can be who you are. You're there with other people who appreciate that and honor that. And even if you're a non-native person attending one of our
Mhm.
tribal colleges and universities, because of our location, we frequently have students from rural communities and other students who might be interested in things like what happens at the institute, that they just have that sense of well-being,
Yeah,
being
and
able
it's
to be
I always
together.
tell people I'm quite white passing. My mother is not Indigenous, my father is.
Mm-hmm.
So I always have to explain myself, and I didn't there. I just didn't have to do it, and it was just
Yeah.
such a lovely feeling of belonging. So I really did appreciate it.
Yeah. On a personal note, I have two grandkids going to school at IAIA
Oh,
right
nice.
now. Yeah, junior, and one of them's a junior and the other one is a senior, just
Oh,
doing her senior show right now.
very
So,
cool.
yeah, so now we're going to talk about your book, The Berry Pickers. It's about a young Canadian Mi'kmaq girl named Ruthie, who is kidnapped at the age of 4, taken from her family. Your novel is set, it starts in the early 60s, while the family was picking blueberries in Maine. To set the stage for our listeners, can you share a bit about the history of Mi'kmaq migrant workers who traveled to the United States for work and share how First Peoples were treated in the United States?
Yeah, so the Mi'kmaq have always been um, traveling down because that border is not really our border, right? So we have a whole confederacy with the Penobscot and the Passamaquoddy, the Abenaki, the Mi'kmaq, the Lostaway. So we had the Wabanaki Confederacy. So that border is actually
Mm.
not our border. So there's always been travel up and down, basically Boston up to um, Newfoundland. There's always been a lot of travel down that eastern corridor. And my dad was actually a berry picker in the 1960s, 70s with his family. And that's where the inspiration for the book came from, just all the stories that he told. And it used to be in the 60s, up until about 1977, 1972, 73, that a lot of the reserves here would just clear out and they'd all be down in Maine picking blueberries for the
Mm.
summer. And then they come back to pick apples here where I live. I live in the Annapolis Valley, Nova Scotia, which is apples and wine is what we have in farms. So yeah, they would come back and do that farm labor as well. So it's always been happening, but not. It was happening more in the 60s and 70s for money to be paid, and then we would
Mm.
come back. My dad always complained that my nan and grandpa would save the money and buy them new boots and school supplies and stuff when they wanted to buy toys and candy.
Which is what happened
So
to the children in your novel. Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So, and I think I didn't know why. My dad said we stopped going in 72. So when I was down in Maine for the Maine Humanities event a while ago, they had mentioned that there were some laws changed in 1972 that made it more difficult for the Indigenous folks to come down to Maine to do that work. So a lot of people stopped going then.
Mm.
I'm not were. They did experience quite a bit of racism, but the stories that my dad tells are always happier ones, like just ones full of joy and laughter, as opposed to um, ones. He said it existed, but he just doesn't like to talk about that. He
Hmm.
likes to talk about the fun times. But yeah, so he said even now he'll go down to Maine. Him and my uncle will sometimes get in the car and drive to Maine in the morning. It's a 6 hour drive to get lotto tickets and then visit a friend and then they'll drive home. And I'm like, that's so crazy to me.
Oh, yeah, but it's recreating their journey, right?
Yes, it is. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, they're
Actually,
recreating that.
back before I wrote the book, when my dad was trying to convince me to write a story about the berry pickers, I told him I couldn't because I wrote fiction. Him and I went down to Maine to the berry fields, and he told me the same stories, but I was there in the place, and it had a whole different reaction. And it turns out there was a story. And when I did my American launch in Portland, my dad and I went again down to the same berry field. So it was kind of like a full circle moment. It was lovely.
Yeah, that does sound really, and I think that the description of the experiences of people going traveling to Maine and then were very vivid. So I can see where you felt that because you really connected to the land and the
Mm-hmm.
sky and the place that they were in that journey. So I could see that. So I wanted to talk about the act of violence that really is at the root of the novel,
Mm-hmm.
which is the stealing of a child. Everybody is traumatized by that, including the adoptive parents. So in
Mm-hmm.
particular, that experience happens. The lives of descendants are therefore, traumatized. So you mentioned in other interviews that you intended for your book to be a character study. So could you talk a little bit about how you view the experiences of racism, grief, loss, and that lack of agency, how those impact people, and how you wanted to illustrate that in your writing?
That is a huge question.
It is a
But
huge
yeah,
question, but it's such a difficult. I know one of my friends said this to me. She said, it's just such a hard story.
yeah,
It's a
yeah.
hard story to tell, and she was having difficulty reading it.
Oh, wow.
And I thought, and I felt that way also, right? It felt really close to home, so I thought it would be really great if you shared how you navigated that and how you,
Yeah.
messaged what you do.
Yeah, I don't think I sat down with an intention to create a message. I always tell my students now, most writers don't write to theme. They just write a story that's based on their experiences and who they are as a
Mm.
person. And then those themes come out naturally. And some people think because it won a crime novel award that it's like a mystery or something.
Mm.
And it's not. And I always say, because I wanted it to be a character sketch, I wanted to show how one act, one very terrible act, can ripple through generations, can ripple through a family, and can last. Right? You don't just lose a 4 year old and you're over it in a week, right? So I wanted to show how that impacts the brother who is allowed to
Hmm.
see her, and how it impacted. I'm not giving anything away. I give away the whole story sentence. So
Yeah.
Ruthie, how, yeah, and how Ruthie grows up and how she understands her place in the world with knowing that something is kind of lacking and missing and trying to find an identity for herself. So I really wanted to show how he grieves, how Joe grieves, and he does it in a very self-explosive way. He doesn't grieve properly.
Hmm.
Um, and then he ends up leaving. And I wanted to talk. I didn't intend on talking about missing and murdered Indigenous women and girls, which is obviously anybody on this call knows that that is a significant issue both here in Canada and in the U.S. So I wasn't intending to do that. It was just a byproduct, I think, of my time. I used to work. I I teach English and creative writing now at a university, but in my previous life, I worked in Indigenous communities. So I worked with I sat in circles with residential school survivors. I've heard lots of stories. I worked in healthcare. So it was just all of those things come together to help create a story about these women, murdered and missing Indigenous women, how a brown girl goes missing and nobody seems to care. And I've had some people say to me, that doesn't seem realistic though. I was like, doesn't it? I said, if you look at America right now, and I just use the American one because it was in the media, this happens in Canada as well, but everybody knows who Gabby Petito is because she was blonde hair, blue eyes, and she went missing, and they did documentaries on her. It was in the news, but nobody knows who Emily Pike
Hmm.
is. And that really, I said, that sums up everything that we're trying to say sometimes is that yes, it does happen. A brown girl goes missing and a little girl and no one cares. So I didn't intend I sat down for that to be a theme. I think it just came out by nature of who I am and the work I've done and the books I read and the stories I listen to. Mhm.
Hmm.
Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I was really struck in my own reading of it that I didn't really contextualize it so much in the um, MMIW, which impacts all of us because it's occurring in
Mhm.
our communities with our own relatives.
Yep.
What I really looked at was the impact on the family and
Yeah.
how really tortured her adopted mother was and the silence
Yes.
of her adopted father and her aunt. So that part of it, when I think about it as a character study, I think about it in the context of how it impacted Joe, who thought he was responsible
Yes, he
for
did. Yeah.
her disappearance, which is
Yeah.
such a normal thing for a child to
And he
feel
just carried.
like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. Acted it
When
out.
when I wrote with Lenore and Frank, who are Norma's parents, when I
Hmm.
wrote them, because she has mental health issues, right? So it's like from her own pregnancy losses. And people ask me, why do you think that June and Frank would allow this to happen? I said, we never know what people would do for the love of someone. Like,
That is so absolutely true.
we
That
don't
was
know.
one of the questions that, we talked about, me and my colleague, that Aunt June, the sister to Lenore, who's Ruth's
Hmm.
kidnapper, is very complicit in keeping the secret. So how do you think people move through that kind of experience? Like, how do you think people move through loss of what they think a family looks like and everything they believe to be true from Ruthie's perspective, right? Ruthie discovers that, that she had been kidnapped and
Yeah.
a new identity imposed on her, and that
Mm.
people that she loved were complicit in it. Could you speak to that a
Yeah.
little bit more?
Some people have asked me, why is she so comfortable with it? It's like I don't think she's comfortable with it. She's a very quiet person anyway, and she's lived under this shell of quietness her entire life because of her mother. So yeah, she does have this brand new identity kind of thumped on her. And Aunt June to me is a bit of I wrote her as someone that Norma could go to because her parents are so distant and cold. And it just kind of shows that this is what Lenore wanted. She wanted a child her whole life, and then she has one, and she's so scared of losing the child that she has literally stolen from someone else, and she's so scared of losing him that she can't actually give her all love to this child. And and June is there to
Hmm.
provide that of love that Lenore just feels terrified of giving. So yeah, I've had people tell me that they hate Aunt June. I've had people say they love Aunt June. And just like uh, we were talking about this in my class today with my students and character, and some of them were like, well, that person is terrible, and then another student was like, well, they did a bad thing but they're a good person. So this is all
Hmm.
about perspective and how you view the people. But to me, I love Aunt June. I do not love
Hmm.
Lenore.
Yeah.
But
I think,
I
yeah.
think
I think about what I might
and
have
she
done
helps it.
for my own sisters, right? I think that
Yes.
was something that I related to. I thought, oh, how far would I go for my own sisters? I don't know about a stolen child, but I think, I think sometimes in family,
but
you
But
don't
when
know.
Lenore says she was like Lenore told them she was abandoned on the side of the road, right? And
Yes.
she picked her up. Like, and
Yeah.
logically that's probably not the case,
Yeah. But they
right?
wanted it
But
to be true.
you want it to be true. You allow yourself to believe that
Hmm.
because you love your sister, you love your wife, and then you come to love this child. So yeah, it's a hard one. It's a quandary, a moral quandary.
Yeah, it is. And I think that, it appears that it should be really clear to us, some of the data that we looked at because it was forced adoption of Native children was very common. I mean, there were in Canada, they scoop children up into the boarding school system, same thing in the United States. But there was a period of time in the United States prior to the Indian Child Welfare Act where it was pretty much unheard of for a Native family to be able to adopt a child. And so children were often taken from their families and then adopted by non-Native families. And now in the United States, the Indian Child Welfare Act, which was passed in the late 1970s, really requires that tribes be given the opportunity to engage in that process. And wherever possible, then children are put into, tribal homes, either in foster care or also for adoption. So in Ruthie's case, she was stolen. But when you think about children in foster care and children that are put up for adoption, what are your thoughts about how that relates to your story?
Yeah, again, it's not something I was thinking about when I was writing, but I do have,
Mhm.
like in Canada, we called it the 60s scoop. So the 1960s is when the government would go in and take out Indigenous kids from their families and adopt them into white families. Um, and this happened in the 60s. So it's like, I guess there is a parallel there. But there was no government involved in this, right? She was just stolen by a woman driving down the road. But yeah, I don't know how to work my head around that one.
Mhm. Yeah, interesting. There is in the Q&A and also I think in the themes from the questions that we develop, there's a lot of interest in entitlement that might be
Yeah.
possessed by white people and
Yes, of course.
feeling like that they can just take a child or obliterate an identity. Can you talk about that a little bit more?
Yeah, that's obvious in the story, right? The sense that I'm entitled to this child because obviously somebody doesn't want them, which is completely incorrect. But yeah, there's always entitlement when it comes to stuff like that, especially when we're involved, and even in the welfare system, in the child welfare system, prior to all the legislation, like adopting out Indigenous kids to white families, and they thought they had the right. There's a letter that goes around here in Facebook in Canada where an Indigenous child was sold for $10 by the Indian agent to a white
Mm,
family. Go like, what? That was in the 50s. People think it was so far away. I'm like, it wasn't. I was like, that was my mom was born. My dad was born in the 50s. So it's not so far removed. Even in the book, the police officer, he doesn't really put much effort into finding the daughter because it's not a priority for them because they're brown and they're not even American. So there is this whole idea of um, white folks being entitled to the children of Indigenous people. And again, I didn't write the theme, but it just
mhm.
comes out. It just comes out that way, and I get these questions, and I'm like, oh, let me think about it for a while too. I feel like I'm an English
Yeah.
book.
Oh, yeah. So I wonder then, that makes me wonder if the entitlement didn't also then spread to June. And is it
Well, of course,
Alice? Yeah, the entitlement spreads to other
Alice didn't.
people.
Yeah, Alice didn't know, right? Alice thought she was adopted her whole life. So
Yeah.
Alice is But yes, the entitlement, of course, it was spread to June. Like, how do you feel that you have the right even to allow your sister to keep this child? Were you not curious? Did you not want to know if she was really just abandoned? Like, why was there no research done into it? Why didn't you go to the police and say, hey, like, there's just so much. And it's because we don't have to. This is a brown child.
Hmm.
I think the
I,
experience would have been different if it was a white child.
yeah, that was the other part of the question. If she had been white, would they have taken her in the first place? Um,
Probably because there would have been police out in force, but
mhm.
because she was a little brown girl, it was like picking her up and taking her. It's just, and
Yeah,
I hate when people it's so unrealistic. I'm like, no, it's not.
yeah, no, when I think about you sharing the community getting out there and looking for her and
Yeah.
coming back and looking for her, that's what
Mm.
happens in our communities today.
Yes.
When someone is missing, and people in the community search. And
Yes.
sometimes we see help from other agencies, or but most of the time it's people in the community who persist in
Hmm.
looking for their child. And we still experience that entitlement where it's challenging for people to see that the identity of children is so valuable to them
Hmm.
if they can be in their own community. That's
Hmm.
really, really important. So we let me see. Let me make sure I follow some of the questions, and I invite you audience to answer additional questions. Um so there is some conversation in there about people not liking June. So do you think we can fully love another person and lie to them?
I think we do it all the time. Not this big of a lie, obviously. This is huge, right? But can you fully love a person? I think she loves Norma. I think she's the one person in that part of her life who actually really loves her. Um, so yeah, I think you can. I also think it was a disservice to Norma. Like even when she was an adult, she could have told her, but she didn't. She waited till she was forced to, right? And who knows if she wasn't forced through Lenore's dementia, she may never have told. So yeah, there's a dimension of that, I suppose. That yeah, well, that
Yeah.
makes me think.
What about what about from Ruthie or Norma's side? Right? Can Ruthie or Norma love them for
Well,
having
yeah,
done that to her?
I think so because you love somebody from a very young age, right? She was 4, and you just can't turn off. I don't think you can. I don't think you can just turn off love.
Hmm.
I think especially when someone has been there for you when your mother and father were so cold and distant, and you've had this connection, and they've always treated you well. I don't think you can turn off love that easily. I think you can get angry, and I think you can hold a
Mm-hmm.
grudge for a while. I don't think you can fully not love someone who you've loved for so long. I think it would just be really maybe I'm naive or optimistic,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't think so. And I think she was angry with her Aunt June for sure, and that she should have been. But in the end, she was the one person left that she knows from the very, well, not the very beginning, but since she had memory.
Mm-hmm. I'm curious about the decision by Norma not to have children after she
Hmm.
lost her baby and attributing it to what she observed in her mother or
Yeah.
in Lenore. And so what prompted that? What motivated you to go down that path of instead of her saying, "Oh, I have a lot of love in me to give to, I'll try again." What prompted you to make that the decision that she made?
Oh goodness, I don't know. The creative ether. I always say
Was
whatever creative
it
me, then I go with it. Sometimes you're literally just sitting there and it just comes out and you're like, oh, I wonder where that came from. Right? So
right?
I just think that she's such a sensitive person. Norma's so sensitive, right? In her soul, that she doesn't want. She after the first pregnancy loss, she was very excited to be pregnant and have children,
Mm-hmm.
but after that loss and seeing what it did to her mother, she just was like, I don't want to become that cold and that rigid and that like she just saw it as something she didn't want to become, and she was like, okay, I can't do that. I can't do that to myself. I can't do that to even she says it in the book, if there was another child, she would always see the ghost of the first child in the face of the second child. And like, would she really love them as much? So I think there was a lot going on in her head. I sometimes put a little bit of myself. I can't have children, and I wanted to have children, so I think I put a little bit of myself into Norma
Mm.
times, as writers tend to do. So I think a little bit of my own heart went into that one.
Yeah, well, yeah. I mean, I think that that makes sense. And I also think, though, that she gave up and isolated herself even more.
Yeah, we don't always
It,
do what's best for us, do we?
right. She gave up her marriage. And so the very person she didn't want to be,
Hmm.
cold
Yeah,
and alone she became. I noticed that. I
yeah.
thought, oh, how does she lead she had a full life, of
Mhm.
course, with her work and yeah, I really appreciated also, Amanda, the way that she moved from different places and you made those places kind of come alive. with her
Oh,
presence, like the cabin, moving to the
hmm
cabin, having that relationship with the water, that little part of her that this when she discovers that she had been kidnapped and there is in fact that connection to
hmm
place that she
Yeah,
feels.
it's in our DNA,
Hmm.
right? DNA and connection. Some people ask like, why do Indigenous writers always write about land? I'm like, it's not intentional. It's just in our DNA. It's a character. It's always a character in every story. How can it not be?
Hmm.
So yeah, it's just, and she has this innate knowledge that there's something important about the moon and the sky and the grass, and she knows it, but she's not exactly sure why.
Yeah. So talk a little bit about Joe. I
Okay.
think I think Joe kind of is the person who takes on all of the family's trauma around this.
Yeah.
Um, how did you come to find him as a person, as a character who would do that?
Originally the story, when I outlined the novel, 2 years I tried to convince people it was a short story. In 2 years I
Yeah.
failed. So finally I said, okay, let's see if it is a novel. So I started to outline it. And originally there was no Norma in the story. She was there in the beginning and she came back in the end. And it was only Joe's story. Um,
Oh.
but imagine how boring that would have been. But Norma was
Oh, I
like
found
in
him
my ear
very
asking,
intriguing.
I love Joe. He's a hugely flawed character, right? He does some very terrible things. This is where you can be a good person and do bad things. I mean, not if you do bad things all the time, then you're just a bad person.
Hmm.
But he does one bad thing and he just lives with that the rest of his life. He just thinks everything's his fault. And I love how you said that he kind of absorbs all the trauma for the family. He carries that for them. They're all very traumatized by it, but he just feels it deeply, more deeply than anybody else and to a disastrous level. But yeah, I really love the character of Joe. People ask me who's your favorite character, and I'm like, I like Joe. He was
Hmm.
my firstborn, so to speak. Um,
Oh.
so yeah, I love his story and his trajectory. There's actually a song, and it's funny. It's by a band from the U.S., the Secret Sisters, and it's called "Carry Me." And it almost reads just like Joe's story. When I found that, I was like, wow,
Oh,
that
I
is so
gotta write that down. Carry me.
Carry Me by the Secret Sisters. I think they're from Alabama. They're a really good
Huh.
band. They're like on a folk kind of, but
Oh,
the
yeah.
listening to that song, I was just like, whoa, so crazy that it's Joe's story. Yeah,
Yeah, Joe took a journey in I
he
mean,
did.
his story is a journey story. And it took him a
Mhm.
long time to find himself. And it really wasn't until he, kind of had nowhere else to go.
Yeah. Yeah.
That,
Well, yeah, when they removed the rock where he last saw Ruthie, he's just like, there's nothing here for me anymore now. So I
hmm.
guess I'll go.
Yeah.
So,
I was also
but
interested in oh, sorry.
I was just saying his whole journey is eventually getting him to home. It just
Yeah.
takes a real time for the poor fella.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. And he has
Mm,
interesting things that he does along the way, interesting
mm,
people that he gets to meet. And
yeah.
so, one of our readers asked if you can talk about the woman that Joe came across when he's first heading west and he continues to be drawn to her. That was actually a question I was going to ask. So I'm glad that a
Yes.
reader.
Everybody asks me that question. I wanted somebody removed from his story, someone who doesn't know him and doesn't know his story, just to hear him and tell him that you're not horrible, you're not sour. Because you can listen to your parents tell you that all day long, but you're just like, ugh, right? You can listen to the people you love say that, but they're just saying that. He needed somebody outside that situation. So I wanted him to meet somebody who was a little bit sarcastic and snarky because she's a little bit fun that way, but also very wise.
Hmm.
So yeah, he comes across her and he needs someone to tell him that not everything is his fault, that his blood is not sour, pretty much.
Hmm.
And yeah, I like that character. And then he's drawn to her because she's the one who finally allows him to be himself, even though he doesn't quite get it at first. Takes
Hmm.
him a long time. I have had people ask me if she's real or if she's a ghost. I think that's kind of funny.
Yeah, I wondered because when he went back to see her and she didn't really remember him, right?
Mm,
She kind of was like,
at
oh,
first,
but he was so touched by it that he
yeah,
went back. And that can
did
happen to
yeah,
us, I think. Yeah. So I thought that was a good character to bring in there because I think you can meet somebody who really um, shares and impacts you, and
yeah.
you
To be
didn't
a long
necessarily
relation.
impact them. Yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
It
I
doesn't have to
think
be a
that's
long
good.
relationship. It can be someone who just. I have a friend who's still my friend, but he said one thing to me that's lasted forever. When I was writing, he told me that writing was my form of ceremony. And that stuck with me. And now I take that very seriously. And it was just one line that he said to me sitting across my desk from me one day. So you don't know how people are going to impact your life with just a single sentence.
Yeah, that is so true, right? They can. There's still people I refer to, something that they said to me that in the moment was in passing,
Mm-hmm.
but I can still recall even where I was standing and
Yeah.
what that comment was. So there's also a lot of interest in your writing and how you are able to form your characters and discuss topics. One of our readers has asked, or participants has asked, that your father didn't want to talk about racism. So how do you know? Where are you getting the information that kind of
Oh, he
tells you
did.
that? Yeah,
Yeah. Yeah. And it was the 70s and then we were indigenous people. Obviously there was racism. You don't like
yeah.
so obviously it was there. He does that talk about that. And then of course once people found I was writing about the berry fields, so many people, oh, I have a berry story for you. Like one of my friends told me about his uncle who was murdered in the berry fields.
Mm,
So yeah, so there's lots of people tell their stories, and even like my research for the story is dad on the phone, dad, right? You just
mm,
call, and then when he didn't know, he'd send me to his older brothers or sisters. He's one of 14 kids, so there's lots of them who remember the berry fields, so they would help me. But and it still exists down there, right? There's still a little bit of racism everywhere. Uh,
mm-hmm,
so it still does exist. And I see it here too. I live in the Annapolis Valley, which is a farming area of the world. And we have migrant workers here that come in every year from Jamaica mostly. And I see how sometimes they're still treated badly and it irritates me. So it's not so far fetched that in the 60s and 70s there would be racism towards Indigenous people.
yeah, I would agree. And I know there's also curiosity about, are there any characters in your book that you don't like?
Lenore.
And how did you write then about somebody that you don't like?
Well, she's in my imagination. I not notice she's the only one who doesn't have any redemption. Like it didn't give her a redemptive arc, and um,
Mm-hmm.
but she's also again a flawed character. Like, did she do a very bad thing? Yes. Did she have a reason to do it? No. Could she justify? Like, she had mental health issues. So, do we have at least a teeny bit of sympathy for her? I'm hoping
Mm-hmm.
teeny bit of sympathy for her. Some people are like, nope, hate her, altogether hate her. And I was like, oh well, I was hoping that maybe the humanity would come across a little bit because they're
Mm-hmm.
all flawed. Who does some terrible things? Lenore does some terrible things.
Mm-hmm. Talk about May. I thought
Meg,
May was really interesting because, being a woman, and I have a lot of sisters, women friends who are, they have their own mind
yes,
and they have their own way that they show up to support and love you.
yeah,
And of course, she was older and it impacted her differently. How did
yeah,
you
and she's
find her?
yeah, she's like a little bit of combination of a few of my aunties, to
Oh,
be honest.
yeah.
Just the way like I have one auntie who will defend her family to the nth degree, even if we're wrong, she's gonna defend us regardless. And I have a few that are just very blatantly honest, like this is how it is. And I was like, so I just kind of mixed a bunch of my aunts in together to one person in terms of their personality, because she is fiercely loyal and loving to her family, but she's also going to tell them when they're being an idiot.
Mm-hmm.
Joe a few times, right? Tells them to stop wallowing in his own self pity and get on with it. But yeah, she's a fun character too. Her
Yeah.
sarcasm,
Yeah. Yeah, her having her own mind, definitely. I was
yeah,
also really taken by the mother, and the way that um, Ruthie and Joe, and then the way their mother really tried to be at peace with her
Hmm.
loss. And
It.
yeah,
And I had I remember that because I had a hard time thinking of like a metaphor for trying to do that, and she harnessed her grief, so that she could put it into something useful, which is raising the rest of her family. But yeah, she's a good character. I like her.
yeah, I was really taken by that because I think that I often share with people that we as Native people, we live, part of our world is our grief.
Hmm.
Part of the way we have to be in the world is not not just trauma,
Hmm.
not just love, but also the grief, the loss, the loss sometimes and not knowing what
Yeah,
happened,
yeah.
that creates that loss. And so I looked at each of them and the grief that was associated with Ruthie's disappearance
Hmm.
and how each of them really looked like people I knew, looked
Oh.
like experiences that I had, the fierceness, the acceptance, the anger, the blame, all of
Mm.
those kinds of things. You did a really, really great job, I think, of capturing us
Oh.
as Native people in terms of how we try to show up today,
Hmm.
in what can be really, really traumatic experiences.
Yes. And I hope
Yeah.
that, like, I was also writing a story about family, and I wanted people to understand that Indigenous families have joy and they have love.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and I was like, yes, it's a very heavy story, but I encourage people to try to find the joy and focus on the love that they have for one another. Even after all those years, and Joe leaves, and then he comes back, and it's like you
Yeah.
left yesterday. Right? Like, you're back, brother. Come in, sit down, have food. Like, it's just the way we operate in the world.
Yeah. And Ruthie comes back
Hmm.
and she just fits right in.
He does. Like,
Yeah.
she was never gone, and I think that's legitimate. Like, that happens in Indigenous families, right? Oh, come on in. You're my cousin. I've never met you. Come in and have a cup of tea.
Yeah. I noticed that she came back and there wasn't a lot of drama around her coming back. It was like she
Nope.
came home and they were like, "Oh, you came home." We knew.
God, we knew. Yeah,
We
Ben
knew.
knew. Ben knew.
Yeah, Ben knew. Ben knew, and Ben had told them.
Yes.
They fought him about it, but he knew.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I thought that was really that was a good part of that narrative as well. So it's Native American Heritage Month. What would you recommend that people read? Do you have some particular authors or writings that's going on right now that
Oh, there's so
you're I know there is
yeah,
so
so
much.
so much good stuff. Brandon Hobson just came out with a um new novel, The Devil is a Southpaw.
Hmm.
I just got it in the mail like 2 days ago, so I can't wait till Christmas break when I get to read for fun. So I recommend all of his books. I love his books. There's just so many. Of course, Louise Erdrich is legendary. Um, Morgan Talty, Night of the Living Res, is short story collection and Fire Exit. So good, so good, so good, so good. I know a lot more Canadian Indigenous writers like Eden Robinson, Monkey
Hmm.
Beach. That's one of my favorites, hands down. I love Winter in the Blood by James Welsh. Like, I love, 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 love that novel. There's so many. All these are all Indigenous books up there.
Right,
Uh,
right.
yeah, and Split Tooth by Tanya Talak. I love when Indigenous writers write for their own people and not for the general audience. So that I always find that really quite brilliant. But yeah, there's so many brilliant Indigenous authors out there. I highly just Google, and there's so many.
I know it's really being a person who I think read Winter in the Blood when I was maybe in high school.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. I think it is just amazing
Oh,
that there
I
are
love.
so many more Native authors and so many more films. And so the
Yes.
College Fund does have, our indigenouseveryday.com site. I think the team will put that in the chat. we have a whole list of different books, movies, different kinds of ways that people can learn more
Mm.
about Native people. Do you have a particular movie or documentary that you're open
Oh,
to recommending?
goodness, I don't know. I don't really watch a lot of, I'm one of these people
Oh,
who sit down on my couch and put on Law and Order
oh, do you?
1000 and just let it go until I go.
Yeah,
No,
you binge that, right?
I'm just like
Yeah.
not. I do watch like I'm one of the true crime documentary people. Yeah, I'm one of those.
Oh, yeah.
Uh,
Yeah.
sure. There's a really good movie called Wildhood. It's a Mi'kmaq movie, and it made the rounds through the film festivals in the U.S. And I think that is beautiful. It's about a young queer boy trying to find his mom, and it's just really beautiful. So, and that was filmed right here, actually, where I am. But it's
Mm.
called. So if you haven't heard of that, I would highly recommend that one.
Yeah, that's a good recommendation. I think that I'm also really interested in what's happening next for you. What are you doing in terms of continuing to share your writing and thinking of your
Yeah.
next novel or collection of short stories?
No, my next novel comes out next fall, actually. Supposed to get my last round of notes today from my editor, so that's exciting. So keep an eye out. You can follow me on social
Hmm.
media. It's everything on my Instagram. Um, but yeah, so that's exciting. And I'm working on a screenplay for the Berry Pickers. There's been some interest. So working on that. So that's kind of a weird situation because I've never written a screenplay, and it's a very different medium from the novel. So I kind
Hmm.
of had to let go of things that I thought were so important that on the screen, as important as the novel. So I was like, oh, so it's taken a while to get there, but I think I'm almost there. I have a co-writer who's helping me through that. So yeah, so those things I'm working on and just teaching here. I get to teach the first Intro to Indigenous Literatures class in the school, so that's always so much fun. And
That is. I'm happy for you. We need lots of native curriculum in the school, and I think we appreciate you doing that. My team put in the Stand with College Fund where you can look at more recommendations for books, movies, and other things that you can engage with native creators
oh,
about. I was looking at my notes and I realized there was one thing I was going to ask you in terms of your writing um, practice, which is your choice to have each chapter be
right.
someone's chapter. What prompted you to do that?
Well, I wanted to have them to have separate voices. So sometimes when you're writing, it can get a little like characters can mush together and become indistinguishable, kind of. So
Mm,
Um, I actually wrote all of Joe's and then I wrote all of Norma's and then I put it together so that I could stay in their voice. And I thought that would be just a good way to do it. So we see a little bit of Joe and then we see a little bit of Norma, but then we want to see Joe, so we have to go back to Joe. And then we want to see what happens to Norma,
hmm.
back to Norma. So it was a deliberate, and you'll notice some of the end of the chapters, there's a little nugget to keep you reading through. So it was deliberate, but I really wanted to keep them really separate voices, and I hope that came. I'm told it came across well that they're two separate people, and I think that that was a good way to do it and to not get bored of one character. Right? You just get really invested in one character, and then you go to another, then you get invested in that character and have to keep going. So.
Yeah, I mean, I read the novel when it closer to when it first came out, and then I reread it in
Mm.
preparation for this visit. And the thing that I remember when I first read it is I didn't anticipate the ending. I
Ah.
didn't know for sure that she would get found.
Uh,
And so I felt like it's interesting to me that you said your Joe was your original story um, because I was waiting to see what would happen to Joe.
yeah. Oh, good.
And
See, I love
yeah.
it when people relate to Joe because I get a lot of people who say they love Norma, they love Norma, they love Norma's character. And I read my
Oh,
good. Sometimes I read on Goodreads. They're like, we didn't even need Joe's characters. He was unimportant to the story. I'm like, I don't think you're understanding the story.
oh, that's interesting. Yeah, because I liked her character as well. Um, but I felt like she was. held back, where he was trying to be out there fully. It wasn't always the best, like you said, choices,
That's all.
but he
Yeah.
was living fully,
Yeah,
whereas she was containing herself
he
in
was.
a
Yeah.
space because she didn't have that emotional freedom. In
Yes.
some
Yeah,
ways, although he had really bad behaviors, he had a lot more emotional space
he did.
from
Yes.
my perspective. Yeah, yeah. So that was really, really important. I think, well, I'm glad that you had that good experience at the Institute of American Indian Arts and that you were able to join us today. I really
Yes.
appreciate it. We love your work and we're just really happy to look at these important issues that are still so relevant. Your
Still,
story was set, in our lifetime, but really it's happening today. And so then I just hope people who are listening to us can be good advocates, that we pay attention
yes.
when there are missing and murdered Indigenous peoples, that we relate to those stories, and that we also relate real closely to the fact that, Native children, if it's at all possible, should always be with Native families. That
Agreed.
that's
Yeah.
just the best for them.
Yeah.
And that would have been a really important part of that. So my team is doing all kinds of we can learn more about Amanda Peters by going to amandapetersauthor.com. People can also look at the Stand with College Fund site and connect with us on the different kinds of things that we do. And of course, the College Fund supports tribal colleges, but particularly we support Native students. So we
Mm.
put a lot of work into raising money to support Native students with their college journey. And this year, we've given out about $24 million in scholarships. So donations to the College Fund are put to good causes, helping Native students succeed so they can grow up and be writers like Amanda, right?
Yay.
And have that experience of going to a tribal college. I think that that's really, really valuable. And a lot of nice comments being made on the chat from
Oh,
people appreciating your descriptions and all the work that you did. And so, Amanda, I want to thank you so much for
thank you.
joining us.
A
Thank
lot.
you. And best wishes to you for the rest of your writing journey. We all look forward to your next novel.
Thank you. Thank you
Thank
very much.
you.